A veil lifts, and the weight of everything finally makes sense. What looked like a silent life was never empty. It was loaded. Loaded with quiet thunder. The moment comes when something hidden inside begins to surface. Not with noise. Not with flash. But with a stillness so powerful it rewrites the air around it. Eyes widen. Conversations pause. The atmosphere tilts. No one has words, because words aren't built for this level of recognition. This unveiling wasn't sudden. It brewed like something ancient beneath frozen layers, waiting for time to thaw the last barrier. Each year added depth. Each wound added heat, until it reached a threshold. And now the surface can't hold it anymore. Everything that hurt. It didn't just happen. It forged the lens through which reality now bends around you. And while others assumed you were just surviving, a sacred blueprint was unfolding in silence. One nobody else could see. The signs were never loud. They whispered through your skin, through the way you absorbed emotion like static in a storm. Crowds drained you. Chaos made you dizzy. But it was never weakness. It was early proof of an inner architecture that hadn't yet revealed its full form. You pulled away not to escape, but because your system could only hold what was real. Everything else fried the circuits. So you built a shelter within. A quiet fortress. And in that space, things began to evolve. They called it detachment, disinterest, fear. But none of those labels touched the truth. While the world kept performing, you were listening to something deeper. You didn't leave the party. You were preparing the map. They mistook your silence for surrender. But silence is where revolutions rehearse. And now that moment arrives when everything concealed begins to announce itself, not through noise, but through unignorable presence. They suggested hobbies, offered cures, tried to tune you into their frequency. But they never knew you were decoding something much larger. Something only solitude could translate. Behind that calm, a storm was studying. Behind that quiet, a brilliance was blooming. And now it no longer fits inside the walls that once held it. What's emerging isn't just your truth. It's a shift in the story of everyone who thought they understood you. They didn't. And now they can't ignore what they never saw coming. Each quiet pause you've lived through was never empty. It was calibration. Every flicker of loneliness became an invisible blueprint, teaching your being how to resonate with subtler dimensions of life. The discomfort of feeling other sculpted your inner alignment so that when the time came, your truth could move through you without distortion. Misunderstanding didn't break you. It trained you to listen inward, where clarity was never up for debate. The more you pulled away from the noise, the more something ancient inside you started to stir. Like dust clearing from forgotten glass, your perception sharpened. No longer just emotional, your sensitivity began decoding environments like a compass tuned to truth. People's smiles became transparent. Rooms told their stories before a single word. Not through visions or spectacle, but through an inner accuracy few would believe unless they'd felt it. In the stillness, your senses evolved into instruments. Not the theatrical kind shown in films, but precise and wordless. You became fluent in the language of atmospheres, how energy lingers on furniture, how a bird's song can carry warning, how silence shifts when someone hides their intentions. It was never a gift handed to you. It was a frequency you earned by surviving what others ran from. Most of the world sees only what reflects back at them. You started noticing what doesn't. In conversations, you tracked the shadows between words. While others fixated on reactions, you caught the quiet pauses, the microscopic signals of truth that never needed explaining. This wasn't imagination. It was awareness finally stretching beyond the walls of human habit. And as all this unfolded, your journey split into multiple layers, each one preparing you for something vast. One layer, the battle with your own emotional depth. A depth so intense, it could have swallowed you if you hadn't learned how to breathe inside it. Your sensitivity wasn't a crack in your armor, it was a gateway. But the path to understanding that was brutal, forged through trials that would have silenced gentler hearts. You began to realize that this overwhelming perception wasn't your flaw, it was your invitation. A private channel to what others call divine. Not soft, not romanticized. It arrived through intensity. Through experiences that unmade you so you could remember how to build yourself from something real. Not everyone could walk that terrain. But you did. Each insult about being too much, each accusation of reading too deep, lodged into your psyche like splinters. And yet, over time, even those fragments taught you how to feel more without collapsing. Seeing through people didn't isolate you, it clarified the cost of connection. There were nights when your mind questioned whether being able to feel this much was a blessing or a sentence. But still, you stayed. And that choice alone set everything in motion. Some journeys don't unfold in a straight line, they spiral. What starts as emotional chaos becomes a hidden education. In every moment of collapse, something inside calibrates. That sensitivity, once mistaken for weakness, matures into something precise. No longer a burden to be tamed, but an intuitive radar built for realities most can't even detect. It never asks for control, only clarity. Thought spirals others dismiss become multidimensional downloads in disguise. While most search for answers in the obvious, something deeper in you processes layers beneath the surface. Not with logic alone, but with pattern recognition rooted in silence. It isn't confusion. It's cognition of a higher order, tuned to frequencies unseen, where truth reveals itself through quiet collision. Another layer emerges, one that burns. Not with hatred, but with a pure heat that refuses to be compressed into politeness. It's the uprising of a soul that refuses to be downsized. This isn't rage that shatters. It's fire that sharpens. Every suppressed truth, every diluted word, compresses this force until it transforms into kinetic will. That energy doesn't just appear, it remembers. It echoes something ancient. Not a personality trait, but the memory of missions across time, now bottled inside flesh. This tension between boundless purpose and the limits of modern systems becomes unbearable. Not because the world is cruel, but because you remember a version of it that was once divine. The fire within doesn't seek revenge. It seeks reclamation. It blazes each time vision is mocked as fantasy. It flares every time purity is mistaken for immaturity. The more the world dismisses what is real inside you, the more that heat insists on rising. But it doesn't destroy. It reveals. Its root is not rage, it is devotion in disguise. This isn't bitterness. It's heartbreak turned into motion. A fierce kind of affection that can't sit still while potential goes unseen. Not for self-glory, but because something inside cannot tolerate the silence of dreams left unlived. The reaction isn't to be understood, it is to ignite. Eventually, the third layer unfolds, and it's the most invisible of all. The hidden orchestration that forced every breakdown into design. The betrayals weren't accidents. The disappointments weren't delays. They were recalibrations. Like a storyline written by a force that sees your whole timeline at once. Every clash, every fall, every false promise set you up, not to break, but to rise precisely on cue. And the curtain's already lifting. Sometimes the most important parts of your story feel like they don't belong to any story at all. The moments that sting the deepest often look like accidents, like background noise. But later, when the dust has settled, patterns begin to show their faces. And it becomes clear, none of it was random. Each twist in the road was a disguised invitation to become something greater than before. Every time pressure closed in, what felt like chaos was actually precision. The people who frustrated you weren't interruptions, they were instruments. The obstacles you thought were setbacks were actually gentle traps, designed to pull hidden strength to the surface. Without realizing it, you were being shaped by a process too vast to explain while living it. The ones who crossed your boundaries weren't just betrayers. They played necessary roles in your expansion. They uncovered the places where you gave too much, trusted too fast, or mistook proximity for alignment. It wasn't punishment. It was revelation, showing exactly where your light was leaking out. Each collapse of trust rewrote the way you protect your energy. Where once you tried to earn your place in people's lives, you now understand that your presence is the prize. You don't just build fences, you start planting gardens behind them. And somewhere along the way, approval loses its grip on your value. Eventually, the illusions you built around human connection begin to dissolve. You stop searching for safety in temporary hands. You begin to root deeper inside, finding solid ground within your own essence. What felt like abandonment was actually a rescue, from relationships that could never carry the weight of your becoming. Your heart still feels, but now it's wiser. It no longer confuses kindness with obligation. It no longer tries to fix what was never yours to hold. The clarity born from being broken shows you how to love without losing yourself. And in that, your compassion evolves. Not smaller, but sharper. But when clarity refuses to come gently, the universe doesn't wait. It rearranges your life like a sculptor with a chisel, not to harm, but to reveal. Sometimes it comes as betrayal. Sometimes as endings that feel like collapse. Either way, it forces you out of the illusion. And what's left is raw, but real, the bones of a life that can no longer be faked. The mask begins to crumble when it grows too tight. It doesn't break in a flash. It fractures slowly under the weight of living a life that no longer feels like yours. One day, the role becomes too painful to play. That's when the unraveling begins. Not as failure, but as release. What others see as collapse is often the first breath of real freedom. Familiar paths stop making sense. Bonds that once held meaning lose their grip. The body begins speaking in symptoms when the soul is silenced too long. Resources run dry, not to punish, but to push untapped strength to the surface. From the outside, it looks like disarray. From within, it feels like being split open and rewritten at once. But what vanishes during these storms isn't your life. It's the shell that no longer fits. Every part that falls away has already finished teaching you. Every bond that breaks was holding back something more honest. The emptying is never for loss. It's to clear space for something that can finally breathe at your full scale. There's timing behind the upheaval. A rhythm that may appear merciless, but is tuned with unshakable precision. You're never buried under more than you can rise from, but neither are you allowed to sleep through your own becoming. The force that guides you knows the exact dose of pressure needed to wake what's hidden without extinguishing your spark. This shift rattles the foundations of identity. The name you built for yourself begins to feel foreign. The conversations that once excited you now feel hollow. Actions you repeated for years now leave behind a strange silence. A disconnection sets in, not from life, but from the version of it that's no longer real. You begin watching yourself from the edges. There's a strange distance between what you do and what you feel, like acting in someone else's story without knowing why. This estrangement isn't confusion. It's the unraveling of old programming. And with every unravel, your true form begins to take shape. Pain becomes something more than suffering. It becomes a sculptor. Its blade isn't cruel. It cuts to expose what's been buried. The intensity you face doesn't arrive to break you. It's calibrated to activate what only awakens under heat. Not punishment. Initiation. Hidden layers of intelligence within you begin stirring. Locked potentials once sealed in silence. This transformation demands more than solitude. It demands boundary. The roles you once played for others begin to expire. Those who counted on your silence now meet your voice. Those who fed off your agreement now face your clarity. Kindness can sometimes become a trap when it's taught as silence. There's a subtle programming that equates compassion with disappearance, a quiet erosion of self for the sake of keeping the peace. That inner wiring tugs at you when others begin to flinch at your growth. The more you evolve, the more you feel their discomfort like static in your chest. And part of you wants to fold, just to make it all easier. But that fire in your core won't let you shrink again. Not this time. Something ancient and sharp begins to rise through the cracks, not as destruction, but as clarity. It's not rage for rage's sake. It's a deep refusal to keep carving yourself into smaller shapes to fit inside expectations you never agreed to. That quiet burn inside is love turned fierce, a love that refuses to let you betray your own expansion. It becomes clear that your path was never meant to stay hidden in the background. You weren't born to orbit someone else's comfort. You came to catalyze, to disrupt, to awaken. That means allowing certain illusions to fracture, especially the one that says love never confronts, never challenges, never disturbs. Growth often wears the mask of chaos before it reveals its true name. Sometimes it all erupts at once. A boundary is crossed, and something inside you finally speaks without hesitation. It may come through words, or simply a moment when your energy shifts so loudly it silences the room. The part of you that used to hesitate begins making decisions with startling precision. No apology. No delay. Energy begins to behave differently. What once felt like chronic heaviness dissolves overnight, giving way to currents inside you that move like static fire, unpredictable, alive. Sleep no longer obeys the same clocks. Time slips in strange ways, as your internal rhythm starts syncing with something that doesn't care about alarms or calendars. The body struggles to keep up with the invisible charge running through it, not as illness, but as acceleration. Dreams shift from background noise to front-row revelations. You begin waking with impressions that feel more real than anything daylight offers. Scenes play out that contain meaning you can't quite explain, yet your bones remember them. Guidance arrives without language. You're not escaping in sleep, you're being educated through it. And sometimes, echoes of other lifetimes rise to the surface, answering questions your waking self never knew it was asking. Your emotional bandwidth stretches wider than logic allows. Bursts of euphoria pass through you for no reason at all. Then suddenly, a grief emerges that feels larger than personal. It's not instability. It's expansion. Your nervous system is learning to hold more than the small emotional spectrum you once called normal. You're being shaped into a vessel, not for comfort, but for light. And then come the signs, undeniable, inescapable. Patterns repeat with eerie precision. You think of something, and 3 unrelated sources echo it back within hours. The old part of your mind resists, wants to explain it away. But the evidence piles too high, too fast. The message isn't subtle anymore. You are being met. The linear logic of time begins to crack. One moment can stretch endlessly, while entire days vanish like they were never lived. You sense time not as a straight line, but as a web, folding in, looping back. You feel yourself slipping between layers of experience, sensing what's to come, or what's always been, before your mind can catch up. Abilities you once brushed off as imagination begin speaking louder. You no longer try to suppress them. A knowing arrives before the facts do. Emotions from across a room land in your body like your own. Your intuition no longer asks for permission. It moves with authority, claiming space it always belonged to. And you finally let it. Awareness sharpens without warning. You begin sensing what's coming before the world makes a sound. Emotions arrive before faces. A place you've never visited leaves you breathless, like it remembers you even if you don't remember it. Your body reacts first, a pulse in the palms, a chill behind your eyes, as if something sacred is trying to break through the surface. Words come to you in moments that feel too perfect to be rehearsed. You know exactly what to offer someone mid-breakdown, as if their pain has a frequency you were born to understand. And yet, you're still in the waiting room. Not fully emerged, not fully hidden. The transformation is brewing, steady, unstoppable, just beneath the surface, gaining weight with every quiet day. This pause before eruption isn't passive. It's a threshold. A stretch of time designed not to delay, but to align. You're being given the chance to stabilize the core before the spotlight arrives. Because once the truth of what lives inside you steps forward, nothing can be unseen. And the world around you won't let you go back to pretending. This stretch tests your honesty with yourself. Will you remain in the safety of old discomforts just because they're familiar? Will you abandon your voice to protect the peace of those who benefit from your silence? Or will you risk rejection by finally showing up as who you've always been? Each time you speak what's true, even if your voice trembles, you build a new foundation. Each time you choose to trust the pull rather than resist it, you make space for something larger than logic. You're not here to explain yourself. You're here to become something that speaks for itself, through energy, through presence, through undeniable knowing. Something begins to speak through you that isn't learned, it's remembered. After years of filtering every word to avoid discomfort, your voice now lands with a weight that bypasses language and speaks directly to the nervous systems of those who hear it. It's not loud, it's undeniable. It doesn't ask for attention, it commands presence without needing to raise its volume. Truth becomes undeniable in your presence. The moment you speak from that deeper place, it disarms people. They stumble into confessions, crack open in your silence, wake up mid-sentence. It isn't just what you say. It's the frequency behind the sound, a frequency that makes illusion impossible to maintain. Your entire presence shifts. It's not just vocal, it's vibrational. Once overlooked in every room, you now shift atmospheres without even meaning to. The one who once curled inward now walks as if gravity belongs to them. No longer apologizing for existing, you take up space like someone who has earned their own arrival, through storms, through silence, through sacred dismantling. Sometimes it takes just a few words from you to unlock something dormant in another. Not because you're trying, but because something in your presence disrupts their numbness. You don't promote your wisdom. You embody it. And that embodiment opens unseen doors in others. Doors they've been circling for lifetimes without keys. Information begins arriving before thought. Streams of knowing drop into your awareness fully formed, bypassing study or logic. You begin to witness patterns inside people that they've never spoken aloud. It doesn't feel like guessing. It feels like remembering something they haven't yet remembered themselves. What flows through you isn't vague. It's surgical. You can trace emotional patterns across generations, sense the consequences of a choice before it's made, and speak to someone's soul with words that feel handcrafted for that exact moment. You remain still inside the storm of their experience, not detached, but anchored. That's what allows transformation to unfold through you rather than from you. You feel without drowning. You listen without absorbing. You remain grounded in your own pulse, even when others collapse in front of you. And when joy arrives, you celebrate without dissolving into it. People begin leaning into you as if your presence itself were gravity. Not because you ask, but because you're steady in a world that rarely is. Connections that once seemed random now reveal themselves as threads in a larger design. The events that repeat, the people who cross your path, the moments of perfect timing, they begin to align, not as coincidence, but as coordinates guiding you into your role as a threshold walker. The old ties fall away, not in cruelty, but in preparation, clearing the space for alignments so deep they feel older than memory. And then it becomes visible, the raw miracle of a soul who turns every wound into wisdom, every collapse into coherence. You stand not as someone who avoided darkness, but as one who walked through it and returned with the light still intact. Your journey says what words can't. Nothing is too lost to be reclaimed, nothing too fractured to be rewritten in gold. Others begin to rise when you stop hiding. The moment you stop dimming your brilliance to avoid discomfort, entire paradigms start to dissolve. Your unapologetic truth becomes a signal. Your presence becomes permission. What once felt like exile becomes architecture, a lighthouse built from your own bones, now lit for others to find their way back to themselves. The one who once broke open from too much feeling becomes the one who gently teaches others how to feel again. The one who clawed their way out of silence now speaks with a voice that softens the rage in others. What you once survived becomes your syllabus. Your pain becomes a bridge. People don't stare because you're loud. They pause because you make them remember. Not in theory, but in sensation. In your presence, they remember what it feels like to not be afraid of themselves. That maybe the limits they live inside aren't real. That if you could unravel and rise, maybe they can, too.